Well, I want to welcome you to the second day of Prairie Appreciation Day. We're talking about the prairie. We're talking about the animals out on the prairie, the plants that are out on the prairie. And the animal that we're talking about at this station is the bison, or the buffalo. And this is the big buffalo that we've dug up on our farm, which is off this way about 15 miles from where we're at today. And I'm going to explain a little bit about the parts of the buffalo to you first. This is the buffalo's teeth, and so they're very much like your teeth. The only reason they're black is because they've been buried in the mud. And the buffalo eats a lot of grass, so he's chewing like this, and his teeth get wore down, or its teeth. And we know this is an old buffalo because you can see that these teeth are just about worn out. In other words, he hasn't got much. If this gets worn much more, the roots are going to start breaking off from the tooth, and then the tooth is going to fall out. So we know this is a very old buffalo here. This is the front leg of the buffalo. Now the buffalo has pretty short legs in the front because he has a real deep body. In other words, the brisket and the chest reaches very close to the ground on a bison. So this is the front leg. This would be like the bone you have between your knee and your ankle. And this would be an ankle bone. And you can see how it turns like that. And this would be like one of your toe bones. Think of your big toe. I get this on here so it's not upside down. So it goes like that. And this is how the front leg of the buffalo would look. Of course, it would have another toe on this side. And it would have a hoof on the end. You know what the footprint of a buffalo looks like. So that's the front leg. And what's this over here? What's this piece here? Colton?
Back leg.
Back leg. This is the back leg. And what's the round part on here? What's this part? On the back leg.
Is it part of a joint?
Yeah, and what joint is it?
The leg joint?
Well, no, hip. He's got it. This is the hip joint, okay? And so the hip joint fits into the pelvis like this, which is kind of cup-shaped. And so when the bison is walking across the prairie, this is how his hip is going. And he walks across the prairie. And again, you can see this is a pretty big animal. The back legs on a buffalo, of course, are much bigger than the front legs. Do you want to see what the inside of the skull looks like?
Yes. Whoa! I am assuming that's where his teeth were.
Well, I don't have the jaws.
Looks like his
okay. So this buffalo is 8 years old when he died.
8?
8. So how old are you?
8.
Okay, so this buffalo died. He was still young and growing, and we know that because you see this crack in the middle of the head?
Yeah.
If this was a buffalo that was like 15 years old, this crack would be grown together. And you see the cracks along here for the eye sockets?
Yep.
They're still growing, you see. And so we know that the buffalo is still growing. Now what do you have in your skull? What's in your skull? Yes?
Your brain.
Your brain, okay. So I'm sure you want to see where the brain is. Okay, you see that hole?
Yeah.
Okay, well the brain would be down. Yeah. The brain would be down in that hole.
Yeah, I might just think of only eating.
So.
I'm not sure if we found the brain. It's on the top.
And so, does anybody know what these are? Yes.
Vertebrae.
These are the vertebrae, right? And the vertebrae. And so, where are your vertebrae? I don't know if I got that together quite right. Where are your vertebrae? You have vertebrae too, just like the bison.
I know where it is.
Where is it?
It's right here.
Yes, right up and down your back. On your back, they're stacked up like this. And you have vertebrae so that you can bend. See, if you had one big straight bone in the back, you wouldn't be able to bend. But vertebrae allow your back to bend. And so each vertebrae gives a little bit like this. And what's in this here hole then that goes through the vertebrae?
The spinal cord.
Spinal cord, you got it. Say, I think.
Very nurse.
Right, she can be a nurse. She'd make a good nurse. Yes.
I feel like our vertebrae are not as big of can't be like as big as.
Yeah, they're not as big, but there's about the same shape. We'd have very much the same shape of vertebrae, and they serve the same function. So, and you see the two smaller holes that are in the vertebrae?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got nerves that are running through those,
Yeah.
and then they go out to your body, so that you have feeling all up and down, up and down your body. So the spinal cord runs into here, and goes into the brain. And I want to show you the eye sockets. So this is an eye socket, the other eye socket would be here. See where the hole is, that's where the eye socket is.
That's a big guy.
Okay? And so, from your eye, you got to have a nerve that goes to your brain. Otherwise you still couldn't see. Even if you had an eye, if it wasn't hooked to your brain, you wouldn't be able to see. So, if you look right here, you see this little canal here?
Yeah.
And there's one here?
Yep.
And those canals go to the brain, so that the buffalo is able to see. Yes?
And I think they had a cord right there that could go up to their brain.
Right. From the, yeah. It, and maybe you've had a real bad cold sometime and you heard that it was a sinus cold. Here we got sinuses that are in your head, here and here. Actually, there are sinuses up here too, but this part has gotten pretty much kind of decayed. We do have the pieces for the nose and stuff at home. Colton has seen them, but we haven't got them glued back together. We got to wait till it dries out enough so that it's not shrinking anymore. Yes?
I don't know how like their brain can stay in there, but like their head is a little sharp on the top, and those cords could just come off if those cords hit that maybe.
Yeah, although they're pretty well protected. These bones are really strong and heavy in the bison. It would take an awful, they can take an awful lot of hit. Okay, so this bison died a long time ago in a sinkhole. Who knows what a sinkhole is? Yes?
It's where you start walking and then the world and then you fell in a pit and you're not able to get out.
Right, and what's in the pit?
A bunch of mud.
A bunch of mud, yeah, that's right. and we call it mud and muck, okay? And that's what we're doing on our farm. We're digging out a sinkhole. It's actually right off the corner of our farm, where at least 7 bison have died. And there have also 2 antelope have died, because we got the bones from 2 antelope that died there. And we know they're antelope because we got the spine. The spine on an antelope, who can tell me what an antelope looks like? Yes?
It has 2 large horns in front and has a very kind of small head,
Right.
like a dog.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
The antelope are a little bit lighter with coloring than the deer, and they're a little bit smaller.
Right. And the thing about an antelope can jump a long ways. An antelope can jump 20 feet. And I'll show you why. If you look at the vertebrae in the antelope, the ends of it are round like this on both ends. And so they got a flexible spine. And that allows them to jump and stretch out a lot more than a deer or another animal. Okay, and so these animals all died in a pit on our farm. And we find this bone here, and this bone is what? Hooks onto your backbone.
On your shoulder?
No, right in the middle.
Protects your lungs.
Rib cage.
Rib, yeah, this is the rib. This is a rib out of the rib cage. Very good. Okay, and again, you can see the size. Compare this rib to one of your ribs. You know, this is a big animal, huh? Compared to your rib, it would be many times bigger. These animals all died in a sinkhole a long time ago. How many years ago you think these animals died? Yes?
Maybe like 50.
I think we need a bigger number. It's a lot longer than that. Yes?
200.
I think it's a lot more than that.
2,000 million years ago.
Well, we'll take off the million. This died 3,000 years ago.
I was close.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, if I don't
Okay,
know a million.
because we have tested 3 of the bison to see how old they were. The newest one was 2,490 years old, or ago, when it happened. That particular bison had been butchered. In other words, the Indians had butchered the bones, and they were not in the sinkhole. They was near it, but they would come by probably and pull animals out of the sinkhole, maybe, and butcher. Yes.
So, like if you cut it off some of this on that rib, you can make like a really huge circle with all the buffalo ribs, and then it would be a circle of buffalo ribs, and then it would be a piece of art.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. It's a good idea. So he died. These died about 3,000 years ago, when there were buffalo here and antelope here. We know that antelope like to live on prairie, where prairie grasses are short. We have not carbon dated the antelope yet, but we think they're going to be about 6,000 years old. And because about 6,000 years ago it was real dry around here, and there were no trees, and so just about everything was prairie. And right now we got the bones are up at the Science Museum in St. Paul, and they're getting identified up there, and then they will be sent away to be carbon dated. So we will know more later on. Yes?
What's carbon dated?
Carbon dated tells you how old something is. Anything that's living can be carbon dated back to 60,000 years ago. Because carbon is it's a substance that's in everything that's living. It's got carbon in it. Just about everything has got carbon in it. And carbon breaks down at a certain rate. In other words, it begins to deteriorate at a certain rate. And so it has like a half-life. So if it's got half as much carbon in as a live buffalo, then it's going to be, there are dates set up for how old that buffalo would be then. And then they can carbon date down to within 100 years, when we're talking about thousands.
And like if everybody like extinct all the buffaloes, we wouldn't have like any more meat to eat from them.
Right. And actually the antelope that we found have 4 horns on it. And those, they're right. They are extinct if this holds up. And we're pretty sure it's going to hold up. But so some animals do keep going extinct. Other animals keep changing the way they live in order to survive because of the changing environment that they're in. Okay, so that's the story of the bison who lived out on the prairie, and there were bison around here. I want to talk just a little bit about the plants on the prairie. So on the prairie you got two plants that dominate the prairie. One is the grasses, the other is the wildflowers. And the grasses grow in bunches. And all the plants that grow on the prairie, they have to be able to tolerate a lot of wind. If a tree tries to grow out on the prairie, eventually the strong wind is going to come along and blow it over. Or what it does, it blows it over far enough that it breaks off the little roots in the tree. They're not roots that you will see because we're not underground, and the tree will eventually die simply from the wind blowing it one way than another. So the prairie grasses, they can bend over. These particular grasses do not bend because they are getting dried out. And all around these bunch grasses, there are flowers growing. And the flower that's growing around this prairie, here is the compass plant. Who can tell me what a compass is? Yes?
It's a thing that shows you what way you're going.
Right, like a little dial. And the compass plant, the leaves are always planted north and south. Just feel this here plant, how rough the stalk is. And you see...
That's dirt.
Yes. Okay, would you like to chew on that?
No,
I would.
Okay, and the reason you wouldn't, of course, is because all those little pickers, that's what plants do to protect themselves from animals so that they don't get chewed on. Okay, well, thank you for coming. You were a very attentive group.
Thank you very much.